I got it on my side. Yep, I see Jackie's trying to navigate bedtime in the background. Don't worry, Jackie, I totally understand. So you do what you need to do. You can always come back to the recording later. So thank you so much, everyone, for having me and for joining us and giving up your evening. I know it's not an easy thing to do, especially as a single parent. So hats off to all of you for making the commitment and being dedicated to your own personal development and giving yourself some me time. I really want the session, as Tam said, to be interactive. So feel free to pop the comments in. Tam, if I miss things in the comments, just let me know, because my webcam also decided to die. So I'm on my phone tonight, but it's fine. We're going to make it work. But yeah, so one thing I wanted to start off with is just introducing myself and finding out a bit more about you. So I'd love to know where everyone's joining in from. I'm sure you're probably confused about where I am in the world, because I sound American, but I live in London. So I've been in London for 15 years now, but grew up in the US in the Midwest, ended up marrying a British man who I met randomly at Born with Beach during an internship in 2007. So crazy story that maybe one day I'll write a book about, but now married, and we have a 5-year-old, and live in London, in West London, where he grew up. So here I am, loving the UK, loving life abroad. And I became a career coach about 10 years ago. So I've always worked in corporate, in mostly finance and consulting, professional services. And during that time, I became a qualified coach. And 4.5 years ago, I joined one of London's business schools, and I became a career coach with them as well. Also, I have my own coaching company called Balanced Mother, which focuses on the topic that we're talking about today, which is guilt. Because one thing I found when I became a mother was that there was just a huge amount of guilt about everything and anything. And it was like, I felt like I was a crazy person, even if I spent 24/7 with my son, and then, for 1 minute thought I'd do something for myself, it felt wrong. And I couldn't figure out, like, where was that coming from? What was causing me to feel this way? And I actually had my own coach when I went back to work after maternity leave, and she had been a mother and her children were grown at that point. But I remember talking to her about this topic and saying, I can't figure out where it's coming from. I don't know how to stop it. I feel like I should quit my job because, my son cries every time I drop him off at nursery. So it must mean that I have to quit, right? I can't have a life of my own. I can't do anything for myself because he just needs me 24/7. And that's crazy now when I look back on it and I think, I had all of those thoughts. And so by working with her, I realized that this is actually a really common thing that parents go through, especially women. We're notoriously hard on ourselves. We pride ourselves on perfection. We want to be the best mother or parent that we can be. Now, I know we have some men on the call, so apologies if I say women, but I'd love to also get the chip in from dads too. So please let me know if there are any dads on here. If you feel any differently to what we talk about today, I'd love to know that too. Oh, and I love seeing where everyone's joining from. I saw Devon, I saw Worcestershire, all kinds of places in the UK. All great to see you all. Thank you so much for posting that. So yeah, love to share your thoughts with me, or if you've got something you want to say, feel free to come off of mute as well. But one thing I was looking at was the results of the poll that Tam had sent out in your community, and 97% of people are feeling guilt. So that means like maybe one person said no, and who knows, they might have accidentally clicked the wrong button, or maybe it was me that responded. Because now, after the coach been through the coaching myself and having just learned so much about this and where it comes from and how to manage it, I'm like, no, I will not feel guilty about this. I try to cut it off as soon as I can. And I just really want other parents to have that same freedom and confidence and give themselves grace, because we are doing an incredibly hard job, especially if you're doing it as a single parent. You might be the breadwinner, you might be the only parent, you might have very limited help. So you are doing an amazing job. However you are managing it, you are doing the best you can, and that is all that you can do. But I really wanted to look at like the different parts of where this guilt is coming from, because I looked at the responses that were shared on the Instagram page and was like, okay, what are the themes here? What are people feeling guilty about? And usually the biggest one, and I think it was the biggest one that came through in your poll results, was time. So how many of us feel like we don't have enough time to spend with our kids, or we don't have enough time for ourselves? Time is a very common theme with us working parents or solo parents. And Just that feeling, right? Yeah, Jackie's saying never enough time. I've got 6 pages of notes, guys. So if you see me look down, it's just because I want to make sure I don't lose my place, because I'm like a squirrel sometimes and I'll go off on a tangent and forget what I wanted to say in the next point. So don't mind me if you hear some pages flipping. I've just got my notebook here. But so looking at all of the themes, the first one that came out was the time, right? Never enough time. I don't have time to do the things I want to do. I don't have enough time with my kids. I feel like I don't spend enough time with them. And one thing we need to know about guilt is that guilt actually comes from having unrealistic expectations. So I'm willing to bet that if we're really honest with ourselves, we are putting a huge amount of pressure to be this perfect parent, or if not perfect, the best we can be, the best for our kids, the best because we want to give them everything, the best because we don't want to feel like we've disappointed them, the best, because we're just naturally high achievers, high performers, we're ambitious. And so it's not a bad thing to want to give those things, but it is important that we manage those expectations. And one question I have for you all is, how much time would be enough? So if you're saying that you don't have enough time to spend with your child, or you feel like you're not spending enough time, is there a magical number? Is there a certain amount of time per day that you feel would be enough? Have you thought about that? What does that look like? Because that's one thing to be really clear about is, if you do have these expectations that you want your parenting to look a certain way, or you want to spend a certain amount of time, how much is enough? And I kind of feel like that question is, how long is a piece of string, right? Because we're all going to say different amounts of times. I'm willing to bet as the comments pop up, we're all going to say something different. And that's because there's no perfect way to do it. There's no perfect amount of time. There's no right or wrong way. I think that's one thing we have to remember is you can be a good parent and spend 30 minutes a day with your child. You can be a good parent and have quality time just with them on the weekend. It's really about the quality versus quantity. I can see some people saying, 1 hour a day, other people saying less about the number. And absolutely, it is less about the number. And Madeline, such a good point. It depends on the child's age. One thing I think we should remember too is that if you're in the early days of parenting, your kid is, I would say, under 5. My son is just past 5 years old. So I feel like I'm finally getting to the point where he's more independent. He actually wants to go away without me and do things by himself. He doesn't always need me there. And it's like such an amazing, freeing feeling to be like, oh my gosh, I can actually sit down and he will not need me every minute of that time. But if you're in those early days, in the early years, when kids do need you more, and kids are, needy little humans because they can't do things for themselves. So you are going to feel more pulled in that direction. You're going to feel like you have to give them the full on attention all of the time. It's going to feel harder to relax. But I want you to keep the perspective that it is for a limited time. It does get easier. They do get older, they get more independent. And if we're doing our job as parents of raising them to be happy, healthy, confident, then we're doing amazing. That's all we can ask of ourselves. That's all we can do to raise our children. And if you think about, when they're 4 versus when they're 14, don't know if anyone has any teenagers on here, but our 14-year-olds, they're not going to want to hang out with us, are they? They're going to go with their friends. They're going to want to play video games. I've got nieces and nephews that are teenagers, and it's like the last thing they want to do is hang out with their dad, right? They're usually like, nope, I'm going with my friends. I've got plans, this, that, and the other. And you might not see them for days. Whereas your 4-year-old absolutely needs you right now, but it's such a small window in the grand scheme of things that I think if you keep that perspective that it's not going to be forever, you are not always going to be exhausted, overwhelmed, stressed out. It's going to be different things at that age, because I know the teenage years are hard too. I haven't got there, but I've heard the stories. So if anyone's got tips for teenagers, feel free to pop them in the chat as well. But keeping that perspective that it is a limited amount of time, that it does get easier, that you can have time for yourself. Yeah, Dee saying different challenges. I can only imagine. So this quality versus quantity. Hi, is it Joanne? Oh, did you want to say something? No? Okay, no problem. I was going to say, if anyone wants to jump in, feel free to add any thoughts. So yeah, it's about that quality versus quantity time. It's about recognizing that this time is limited. It's not going to last forever. You're not going to always feel this way in those early days. Also, we have to be really intentional with our time. I always say, if you are somebody who's like fly by the seat of your pants, super relaxed, chilled out, go with the flow, that all goes away when you become a parent, because I was that person. I am that girl who would just, want to wake up and fly by the seat of my pants, and whatever I felt like doing that day, I would do. And now with a child, it's every minute counts. You have to be so intentional with your time. And that intention really helps you to be able to plan in some time for yourself. And when you have that time for yourself, you're able to recharge, to refresh, to relax, and put yourself in a better position to then parent your children. Because if we're coming from a space of feeling stressed out, overwhelmed, no time for ourselves, not having enough time with them, then we are parenting from a place of scarcity or lack of time for ourselves, lack of taking care of our own needs. Whereas when we make that time and we get really intentional in having a space for ourselves, it allows us to parent from a space of abundance. And we actually have more to give. We have more energy. We are happier. We're more relaxed. We're able to build in that time with our families, to spend with them, and to really enjoy that time, that quality time, rather than coming from that negative place of there's not enough of it, and I can't do enough, and I'm not spending enough, and I'm not enough, right? That's what it comes down to, is I'm not enough. And you are enough. You're absolutely enough, whether it's 15 minutes a day, whether it's 1 hour a day, whether it's on the weekends only because you might be working full time and you only get home for bedtime. You can still make the time and get some time in. I didn't see who just popped up the question, but I saw, how can you plan some time for yourself? Was there more to that question, or was that the full question, planning time for self? So there is a book actually that I read a few years ago called I Know How She Does It. And it's by a woman called Laura Vanderkam. I can share the book title later if anyone wants it again. Perfect. Thanks, Jaspreet. And so her idea of life, what she did was she interviewed 1,000 women. They were working women, mothers, some were single, some married, some had gone through divorces, all kinds of situations. But she also made sure that they were women that were in highly ambitious, high pressured careers. So they all made at least 6 figures. This was in the US as well, so it's a little easier to do that over there. And she looked at how they spent their time. And this is one thing that I really encourage parents to do as well, is going back to that, being intentional with our time. Take a week of your life and document 30 minutes. What do you do every 30 minutes? What are you spending your time on? And where's your time going? Because when we get real with ourselves, if we think about Western culture, being busy is like a badge of honor, isn't it? How many times do you ask someone, hey, how are you? How's things been? How's life? Nobody ever says to you, hey, I haven't really been doing much. I've just kind of been sitting around, relaxing, meditating, journaling, taking time out for myself. Everybody says, oh, super busy, really busy, no time. I'm always doing something, right? And it's just an automatic response. It's our default. It's the way we're used to operating. And so the concept that Laura talks about in her book of I Know How She Does It is that life is a mosaic. So if you think of a mosaic, it's all these different tiles. They're different shapes, they're different sizes, they're colors, different patterns. And everybody's life is a different mosaic. So you have to figure out what works for you. What is the best option for you and your family, for your children? How can you best make it work? And she had these women document their time. I think they did it for a couple of months, but you can just do it for even a week or a few days. And that will help you to see where you potentially have some gaps of time. I think the other thing is that oftentimes when we hear about having time for ourselves, making time for self-care, me time, we think it has to be like hours a day or hours a week or a month or whatever, when actually it could be something simple like, when you take the kids to school in the morning, can you walk back home and listen to a podcast, listen to some of your favorite songs, listen to an audiobook, even if that's 10 or 20 minutes a day? That's exercise, that's fresh air, that's getting your head in a better space, that's allowing yourself to calm yourself. to get out into nature. All of those things are beneficial for us. And so I did it today. Actually, I walked my son to school. I said, I'm going to walk back home. Each way is almost a mile. And then I walked again in the afternoon to pick him up. So if you were to ask me, did you exercise today, Megan? I would be like, no, I didn't exercise at all. But I walked 3 miles. Yes, I did exercise. And it only took me like 20 minutes to do that because it was just built into my day like that. So I think we often have this misconception that self-care has to be these big elaborate things, like it needs to be a spa day, or I need to be in Europe for a weekend. And don't get me wrong, I'd love a weekend away, without children and things like that. Wouldn't we all? But it's not feasible. And it causes us to put more pressure on ourselves. And then we feel like we're failing again because, we didn't make the time for ourselves, or we didn't do these things where we took care of ourselves, when actually it's the little things built up over time, those little tiles, those little pieces of mosaic in our life that add up over time. If you even did 10 minutes of a book, so many times people say, I don't have time to read. I can't watch a TV show, or I don't have that time. If you listen to a book for 10 minutes a day, or you read 10 pages a day, you could read an entire book in a month. You could read 12 books a year. And 10 minutes is really a small amount of time. I think we all have at least 10 minutes we could give ourselves. And if you did 10 minutes every day, that's over an hour of time you have for yourself. So think about, where can you just pick up those little pieces of time that can add up and just help you to manage that feeling of, feeling frazzled, or feeling like you've always got to be somewhere doing something, or spending your time, doing some kind of work. Or there's the other comments were about housework. So I'm going to move on to that now that I mentioned work. So housework. So I have to say, I'm not someone who feels guilty about housework, because my mindset is that when I am on my deathbed, I am not going to say, man, I wish I washed more dishes, or I wish that I washed more clothes, or I wish I hadn't left, those clothes on the floor. I don't think any of us are really going to wish we had done any more of that, right? So again, it's about that pressure that we put on ourselves of thinking we have to have this perfect house. It's got to be pristine. It has to be absolutely perfect. It's got to look a certain way. It's got to be, Instagram worthy. Don't follow anyone with house accounts unless you really love interior decorating. I don't follow those people because it makes me feel bad about myself. And I shouldn't feel bad about myself. My house is perfectly clean. There's nothing wrong with it. Do I have laundry in the basket? Yes. And the thing is, things like that, the housework, it never ends, does it? How many times do you think, yes, I've caught up on the laundry. My husband did this to me today. Caught up on the laundry. He came home, he filled the basket again. I was like, are you kidding me? I just did 3 loads today and you filled it up in 2 minutes. Tidying up the toys. How many times do we tidy up the toys? And our kids just come in the morning and make a mess again. I don't even bother anymore. I tell my son, put them in a certain spot, move them into the boxes, etc. But I can't stress out over toys every night for the rest of my life, for the next 5 years at least, because it's just not feasible. It's not good for us. It's not good for our mental health. It's not good to add extra pressure on ourselves. It, again, causes more feelings of stress and overwhelm. So you have to pick your battles. Again, going back to that, being intentional with your time. What's going to be more useful for you? Something that is taking care of yourself, putting you in a better mindset, helping you to feel refreshed and energized and able to parent your children the way you want to, or feeling super stressed out and like you can never catch up. Sometimes we just have to accept that it's not going to be perfect exactly the way we want it to be. And that is okay. You have to give yourself some grace, especially you're doing it by yourself. You need to recognize that that is so powerful, that you are running the ship all by yourself, that you may not have dedicated help. You may not have a partner there, and you're doing amazing. I really just think we are so hard on ourselves. And we really need to think about, what are the choices that we are making? What can we make that can help us to eliminate some of that guilt and recognize that, I did 2 loads of laundry today. The basket filled up. That's fine. I'll do another one tomorrow, but I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm not going to stay up until midnight tonight. doing more washing because the basket isn't empty. If my kid has clothes for tomorrow, then that's all I need, right? So you've got to pick about what is also the most important things. What are the top priorities? Again, they don't have to be that you finish 10 or 20 things a day. Can you do 3 things a day? What 3 things would be the most important to you that would help you to feel good enough, but able to then spend the rest of that time with your family or spending some time on yourself? So really examining those scripts and those like default conversations that run through our head where we put that pressure on ourselves. And it's only because we are either comparing ourselves to other people and thinking that they're doing something a certain way, or that we have to do it because that's the expectation of us.
There's
Now,
sorry to interrupt. There's a comment in the chat that kind of ties in really nicely with what you've just said. So Richard said that my challenge is that when the kids come to me for the weekend, they're exhausted from a week of school and I'm exhausted from a week at work. It's enough of a challenge to get them to the park or the garden. I ask them what they want to do and they just want to chill out at home. And I think a lot of us can probably relate. You feel like at the weekend you should do all these amazing, you should take them to these incredible places and do these Instagram worthy, outstanding things. But actually that might not be what they want to do or might not be what you want to do.
Absolutely, right? We think it's these expensive days out and these lavish holidays. And then of course you feel guilty because you're like, well, maybe I can't afford it, or I don't have, the time to do it, or it's just not going to work. And actually, I bet if you ask your kids, what's your favorite thing to do or what's your memory, they'll be like, oh, I just want to ride my bike around the neighborhood. Or, my little boy goes to the same park every week. I am sick of that park because it's been 4 years of the same park. But if you ask him what he wants to do, he's not going to say, oh, mom, I want to, fly to Paris for the weekend, or I want to, go to this big expensive outing. He just wants to go to the park. That's all he wants to do. Like, we put that pressure on ourselves. Absolutely. And it's okay to be tired because you know what? You're human. You're human. That's what it comes down to. You're not a robot. Unless someone is a robot, let me know if you are. But I think we forget that, again, we forget that we're human. We have to rest and recharge too. There's nothing wrong with doing nothing. There's nothing wrong with, hey kids, let's just go get an ice cream cone and sit in the sun, or sit on a park bench, or I'm going to sit here while you ride your bicycle around the path in the park. And some things like that, kids absolutely love, My little boy, give him a bug and he'd be thrilled that he's like hunting down mini beasts. That's what he says. So talk to your kids, ask them if they're old enough, ask them, what would you like to do today? What's fun for you? Do you want to just sit and color? Great. Then you are doing enough for them. And that is quality time still spent with them. So it's not about the activity. It's not about the amount of money you spend on them. It is just about the time and the attention you can give them. And, studies show that even 15 minutes a day, we think it's got to be these big, huge amounts of time, but there's been a lot of research by, places like Harvard, really big, famous institutions that know what they're doing when they research these things, that say you do not need to spend a huge amount of time with your children. 15 minutes a day is enough because in the eyes of a child, 15 minutes feels like 5 years. If you say to your child, can you give me just 5 minutes because I need to do something? They're like, oh my God, how long is that, Mom? 5 minutes. And, it's an eternity to them, but five minutes is nothing. So if you could spend that 15 minutes with them, they will think you spent 3 hours, and you've got a win then where you've given yourself less pressure and you can also make some time back for yourself as well. Thank you, Richard, for that comment. And nice to see some men on here. I love it. Then the other topic I saw that came up a lot in the feedback was working. Now, working could be because you have to work. If you're a single parent, you may be the breadwinner. You may be the person who needs to put the roof over children's head. You may need to pay the bills, or you may choose to work. And it's interesting how, regardless of what choice we have, whether we're choosing to work because we might love our job, or we have ambition and we want to have a career as well as be a parent, or we're somebody who is like, I have to work, I don't have a choice, that both of those parties feel guilty. So there's no perfect solution. Again, there's no, oh, if you're a person who loves your job and you want to work, then you're going to be happy. No, guess what? You're still going to feel guilty. I feel guilty still sometimes. My son will say, oh, Mom, what did he say the other day that I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't go to that thing. It was like something I didn't go to because I had a work event. And I also do explain to him, I think it's really important that regardless of your choice, talk to your children about what are the benefits that work brings as well, right? Because if we're coming at it from it's a negative thing, it takes us away from our kids, it means we don't have enough time, there has to be benefits, right? Even if it's a simple thing of it pays the bills, it allows us to have food on the table, it puts a roof over our head. Is there something you've bought for your child? That's because you work and you have made some money. I try to instill that in my son. So I'll say, hey, mom and dad go to work because we want to do things like we might want to go on a holiday, or that toy we bought you for your birthday, we were able to buy that because we worked and we earned money. So sometimes it means that we have to be away from you. Also, you may love your job, and that is okay too, because whatever your choice is, you are showing your family that one, you're doing what's best for them. So whether you're choosing to, you can feel empowered knowing that you are showing them that it's okay to do something that they love and they want to do. And if you're having to do it because you need to pay the bills and carry that financial burden, then you're doing what is best for your family and you're doing what needs to be done. Another important lesson that they need to learn. So if work is important to you, then that's one of your values. So if you're choosing to work, honor the fact that you value your career, you value your ambition. You're showing your children that it's okay to have that too. And you're also showing them that it's possible to balance that career and be a good parent. And if it's something that you are feeling that you have to do to pay the bills and to survive, which we all do, then honor yourself for that and feel empowered knowing that you are showing them that you can do hard things, that you've made a choice, and that you are showing them that they can do that too, that it is possible. So rather than feeling, that it's a negative thing, letting those guilty thoughts creep in your head of, I have to work, because the more we think about it in a negative way, the worse it affects us as well. So being able to find those positive things, even if it's just, I'm showing my kids that they can do this too, or that it's possible. That is what helps them. They can see that you're empowered by your career or empowered by the fact that you're able to take care of your family and provide for them what they need. I saw another comment, Tam. Did I miss, was there something somebody was saying they struggled with something? I just wanted to stop and see what that was.
There's just a few that have gone in around the career. So someone said, this is my biggie. I love that my daughter sees me working and I love what I do, but it gets me every time when so many other kids in the village have parents who are on school runs and around for all the activities.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone else has said, I really struggle with how my kids react about me working.
Yeah.
They get upset when I need to work in the evenings, and it makes me feel really guilty.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's important to recognize that guilt is a normal emotion. It's just like anything else that we feel: happy, sad, frustrated. Guilt is another one of those things. And it is about how much power we let it have over us. Again, I think if your kids are old enough, don't know how old the kids are, can you explain to them that there are benefits of working as well? That it helps you pay for certain things, or it helps you buy them something when they're asking for it, or anything like that that can show them that working is also a good thing, rather than if they're seeing you also feel upset about it or feeling bad that you're having to leave them, then that's reinforcing that kind of sadness and frustration that they might be feeling. And I completely understand how that person is feeling that said that, because, when I went back to work, I had actually been off for 18 months. I was in a contract role when I fell pregnant. I didn't have a job to go back to. So I took quite a while off. And when I did go back, my son cried horribly every single time I dropped him off to nursery, to the point where I said, I think I need to quit. Maybe he's not ready. Maybe he's not old enough. I mean, he was 18 months old. That's crazy. People go back when their kids are a few months old. And interestingly enough, when he was around 3, he one day made a really random comment to me he said, Mom, do you remember? And he's really good at his communication. I know he's only 5, but he does talk about a lot of things that I never imagine a 5-year-old would notice. But when he was about 3, he said to me, Mom, remember I used to cry all the time when you dropped me off at nursery? And I was like, oh no, I'm going to feel bad again. Like, what's he going to say? He's going to tell me like I scarred him for life or something like that. And he's like, and I said, yeah, I do. I said, were you crying because you didn't like it, or what was making you sad? And he said to me, no, I liked it. I was just sad because I wanted to spend time with you. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Like, that's so sweet. Right. But at the same time, he goes, but I was okay. I still liked nursery and I had fun, but I liked spending time with you too. And so I was like, oh, like on one hand, it was like, I could feel guilty about, oh my gosh, he wanted to spend more time with me. But at the same time, he was telling me, but I was actually okay. And I was having fun at nursery. So, if you can talk to your kids about those types of things, I think they understand a lot more than we sometimes realize. And Tam and I were talking about this earlier. Like, it's so funny the things that they notice and they pick up on, and you don't realize, what they're paying attention to. And we often say like, oh, do as I say, not as I do. But actually, as parents, we have to walk the walk. We have to talk. We can't just talk the talk. We have to actually demonstrate that we're doing those things. If we're saying to them, it's good to take care of your mental health. It's good for you to do what you love. It's good for you to find a passion in life. It's good for you to have ambition. But then we're not doing that for ourselves. They're going to see that we've held ourselves back, that we've played small, that we've, felt insecure. And they're going to think, well, she's, she or he is saying this, my mom or dad is saying this, but do they really mean it? Maybe I shouldn't be doing those things either, because mom or dad aren't making the time for that. And they pick up on so much that I think it's important for us to remember that. And that is not to make you feel more guilty, but that is to let you know that it is okay, again, to have needs and wants and desires, and, to want a career or to have to go to work. And so I think kids also, they'll always kick up a fuss at things. And sometimes they want to see what kind of reaction they get from you. Sometimes they want to see, sometimes they might need something else, but they're just taking it out on the work aspect because it's the easiest and most obvious thing. So you might find that, maybe it's not that they hate that you go to work. Maybe they just need a bit of quality time with you, right? Maybe it's, oh, hey, why don't we plan something for Saturday when we have 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever. And having something to look forward to on the days you're not working can also help to give them something to be excited about too. Sorry, Tamara.
There's also a couple of questions around, let me just find the beginning. A few people have commented around the other struggle is around being the only parent who handles the boundaries. So I guess if you've got children, if you're co-parenting and you've got your children are going between the two, and you maybe have the other parent who is perceived to be doing the fun, extravagant, lovely things, and you're the parent that's kind of enforcing the rules and the behavior and the kind of more structure. And someone here has said, I struggle with the guilt about not being to do the fun and relaxed things, but children need boundaries, and I seem to be the boundary parent versus the other one. And a couple of people have kind of joined in with similar comments on that kind of idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think setting boundaries is one thing that's really important for ourselves. And so when we can demonstrate that in our own lives, that again helps our children to see that setting boundaries is a good thing. I think there's also a thing to manage expectations. It is difficult. I mean, I think even if you're in, let's say, a married relationship, you can have very different parenting styles. I know my husband and I are very different as parents as well. And so, I understand that struggle too. I think one thing to do to manage that is when you're setting those boundaries is thinking about, what can you say no to? And by saying no, it doesn't mean that you're reducing the opportunity to do other things. Like maybe you can't afford a big expensive day out like the other person can, or the other parent can, but can you do something else is equally fun with them? Like, hey, unfortunately, honey, I can't afford to go to the circus on Saturday, but I was thinking we could do this instead. Or what else would you like to do instead of the circus? There is always some options. There's always some cheaper alternatives. And I'm sure once you do the other thing, your child's going to forget about that. And I think, we do have this natural instinct that we don't want to say no, because again, that causes us guilt. We've been raised, especially as women, we've been raised that we need to be good, we need to be helpful, we need to be nice. There's all these things that we're kind of told that we have to do and have to be. And so when we have to be hard, or when we have to say no to, whoever it is, it does cause you to feel bad. But what you have to understand is that when you say no to one thing, it creates space to say yes to another thing. And that doesn't matter what it is, or, what is going on in life. You have to recognize too, that sometimes it's just things you don't want to do. Maybe you've got the money, or it's not about expenses or being able to afford it, but it's just, you don't want to do it. And that's okay too. Again, you're human, you're a person, you have needs. You can say no, you can manage those expectations. There's always going to be, differences in parenting. I think it's very rare that people are exactly the same when they become parents. Oftentimes, things come up that you never knew about that person once a child comes into the picture. And so, I know not everyone has the best relationship with their ex-partners, or they might not have that lines of communication open. I would say that's the other thing you could try to do is, can you have a line of communication? Can you try to get on the same page about specific things? I think also it's about communicating with the children if they're old enough that, daddy might do one thing, mommy might do another, and people are different. So talking about differences and how that's okay, and that you do different things with different people, or you do things at different times, and helping to explain that there are going to be those differences, but it's not a negative thing if you can't do everything they want you to do. It is about thinking of, what's an easier option? What's a less expensive option? What's something else you could do that would be equally as fun, but, not take away from the resources that you have available to you. So I hope that was helpful for that piece there. And then so that was kind of the key themes that I saw with the feedback of, what do people feel guilty about? Now, the other thing that we asked was around me time, right? Like, do you have time for yourself? Do you make time to do things that you want or need? And so many people were saying no, that they felt selfish for wanting time to themselves. They felt bad because if they were with their kids, they sometimes were needing time for themselves. Or they felt bad if they did take it, that they weren't spending that time with their children. So first of all, you're not selfish. You're a human being with needs, with emotions, with with feelings. You can be a good parent and you can care for yourself too. And again, if we want to teach our children that they should take care of themselves, that they should put themselves first, that they should look after their mental health and their needs, we have to do the same thing. We have to be able to demonstrate that to them. So you also need to believe, the thing with self-care is, I think self-care often gets the reputation of, oh, it's a face mask or a bubble bath, or journal or meditate. It's little things like that. And it can kind of feel like fluffy and airy fairy. But if you look at the real root of self-care comes down to two things. One is self-love, and the other is self-esteem. So if we are not feeling like we are worthy of those things, then we will never make the time for them. So again, really being honest with yourself, really thinking about, do I feel worthy of having some time off? Do I feel good enough to treat myself to something, or to take a night off, or to find some time to do something that I really want to do? Because what that comes down to is, if we're finding excuses of, we don't have the time, or, some people are like, nope, I never do anything for myself. I don't have any time for myself. Again, I would go back to that. Document your time for a few days in 30-minute chunks and see what you're spending time on. Because I am willing to bet if you had something like an emergency, or you needed to do something for somebody else, you had to take care of somebody else, whether it be your child, a friend, another family member, you would find the time, you would make the time. So why is it that we prioritize everyone else and their needs, but we don't prioritize ourselves? we have to-do lists that are a mile long, but we don't even think to put ourselves on that to-do list. We're non-existent. And one tip I have for that is when you're making your to-do list, put it in two lists. Put one side up all the things you feel like you need to do, you have to do, you must get done. But then on the other side, make a list of what are the things you would like to do for yourself that do not involve caring for anybody else. So nothing to do with, oh, I'm going to organize my kid's closet, or I'm going to tidy up the toys, or I'm going to wash the dishes. None of that stuff. That's not me time. Actual things that would be enjoyable to you, refresh you, relax you, re-energize you. And every day, put one of those things from that list of things you want to do onto the to-do list. Again, you don't have to accomplish 10, 20, 30 things a day. Pick 3. What are your 3 priorities? Keep it simple. The easiest way that we get overwhelmed, we get stressed out, we feel like we're not doing enough, we aren't being enough, we don't have enough time, is trying to do too many things at once. So we all pride ourselves on being multitaskers, right? Who doesn't say, oh, I'm always doing 12 things at once, so I've got 42 tabs open in my brain at any one time. But actually, there's a lot of research around the fact that we are terrible multitaskers. Nobody's actually really that good at doing 4, 5, 6 things at once. And the best way for you to actually accomplish and get things done is to focus on just 1 or 2 things at a time maximum. And if you are, again, it goes back to that being intentional with your time, prioritizing yourself, prioritizing what you need, will then enable you to have more time, more energy, and come from that place of abundance to get those other things done that are on your list. I think it was Ruth that said, oh, she didn't think about putting herself on the to-do list. We never do, Ruth. I know we never do, but we need to. We absolutely should. We are worth it. You are worthy of the care that you give to other people. So please remember that. If you need to write that down, put it in front of you, save it on your phone. You are worthy of the care that you give to other people. And also thinking about, what is it that we want for our children? I'm sure everyone would say similar things of, I want my children to be happy, healthy, confident. And we can only give that to them if we are feeling that way ourselves. And we can only feel that way ourselves if we're taking care of ourselves and we're prioritizing ourselves. So being able to do something that makes you feel good doesn't have to be every day. Maybe every day feels like too much. Maybe 30 minutes a day feels like too much for you. That's okay. Start small. Can you do 30 minutes twice a week? Can you do 30 minutes once a week? And try to do that for a couple of weeks, because actually things like self-care and setting boundaries have to be a habit. So it has to be something that we're incorporating and we're adding into our everyday life, everyday routine. You can't just do it, willy-nilly. It goes back to that being organized, being intentional, prioritizing our time, making sure that we're able to maximize the minutes that we do have. So put it on your to-do list. 2 days a week, 30 minutes, I will, take a walk. I'll get some exercise in, or I'll listen to some of my favorite music. I'll listen to a podcast, or I'll listen to a book. I like to listen to Audible books rather than read, because I just feel like it's easier. I can do it on the go, where, use your time. Like if you're ever on transport, if you're driving, put it on the radio, whatever it is, those little pockets of time, they add up. If you can be just 1%, do 1% for yourself every day, by the end of a year, that's 365%. That's amazing. Imagine if you tripled 300% times the amount of effort that you're putting on yourself now by the end of a year. So again, we put this pressure that it's got to be all these hours and all this time and all these extravagant things, but it doesn't. 1%. There's a great book called Atomic Habits. If anyone is maybe someone who struggles with implementing habits and putting them in place and feeling like they don't have the time for it, Atomic Habits talks about this very same concept of you only need to be 1% better than you were the day before. 1% is nothing. If you told somebody, oh, I did something by 1% better, they'd be like, what? That's a joke. That's not even any good. But again, over time, all those little bits, all those pieces, those mosaics, those tiles, they add up and they make this beautiful, full, rich picture that is your life, that is adding to you, that is adding to your happiness, that is giving you time for yourself so that you can parent from that place of, happiness, relaxed mentality, that abundance that you want to give to your children and your family. So the other thing is, there was a quote I read today, actually, just before I got on this, that I was like, oh, I really like that. And I feel like it's relevant to what we're talking about. It's all about, those little things. And the quote said, being happy isn't having everything in your life be perfect. It's about stringing together all of those little things. So those little things over time make that beautiful picture of your life, make you feel like you are taking care of yourself, because you are. Even if you're doing it little by little, it's adding up. And, again, that reduces the pressure that we need to put on ourselves. It reduces that use for perfection. It helps us to set those boundaries and create that space that we need to be good parents, to have the time for ourselves, and to feel like we can manage these things even when the times are tough. Did I miss any comments? Was there anything else? Any questions or anything? I think I'm caught up, but just want to make sure I haven't missed anything.
No, I think there's a few more around kind of different parenting styles. So Richard has said, finds it hard when kind of the other parent doesn't do the homework activities and kind of sends them across. Mm-hmm. So it, I guess from a child's point of view, would maybe feel like one parent was the homework, the kind of the teaching and the you've got to do this, this and this, and the other parent's like, oh, don't worry about that,
the parent and the mean. I mean, I'll have to say my husband is the parent. I am guilty of going, oh, he's only 5, it doesn't really need to be done. So Richard, I'm sorry, I'm that person. And I can absolutely understand how frustrating that is. I would say, if you have any lines of communication with your ex-partner, that you could, try to come up with some kind of compromise. And again, also communicating with your child. Don't know how old they are, but I'm assuming if they have homework, they're old enough to understand that, sometimes we have to do things we don't like to do. I like to give those examples to my son, hey, I don't always like to do this, but we've got to do it because it's good. It's important for you. It's going to help you in the future, even if he's only 5, and he's not understanding all of it. I think it's still important to explain that to them, and that it will make sense to them over time. And I think too, is you've got to stick to your routine and what is best for your child. And, they will get used to that. I think regardless of, probably even if they were doing it with the other parent too, who really wants to sit down and do homework, I feel like that's always going to be a struggle for parents. But I think as long as you're consistent in your method and the way you approach it, then eventually they are going to learn that this happens when I'm with dad.
I know the other thing someone asked is, you mentioned a book a little while ago in the session.
Oh, yes.
If you could repeat that for them, that would be great.
Yeah, it's called I Know How She Does It, and it's by Laura Vanderkam. And that's the one where she surveyed the 1,000 women who were in the high pressured roles and how they spent their time. And it really is interesting to see how many of them, when she first spoke to them, they were all like, I don't have time for exercise. I don't have time to do anything I like to do. I don't spend enough time with my children. And I really think this exercise is powerful to document your time, even if you just do it for a couple of days, because she had them do it, I think, for a month or a couple of months. And it came back totally different to what they thought. Like, they were all shocked at, actually, they were exercising 5 hours a week. Actually, they did have 3 days to themselves. And, they were traveling for work. These were people that were super high pressured. There were single parents, there were divorced parents, there were, parents who were married, but had, maybe a partner who was also in a high pressured role. So, and she's a time management expert as well. So there's a lot of things in that book about managing your time and how to be really intentional and what types of things you can do to support yourself. And I think everyone, I mean, I did it for myself too. You will find pockets of time that you're like, God, why did I scroll Instagram for 30 minutes that day when I could have I could have read a book or I could have done something else that was really helpful or would have made me feel more relaxed and energized, but I wasted it on, something silly. It's, again, it just comes down to that, be intentional. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I think that was like such an important lesson for me to learn, is like, stop wasting your time, get yourself organized, prioritize what's really important, and the rest of those things then fall into place.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was all the questions and comments that we have. People just now saying thank you so much. Lots of great tips and advice, a really helpful and supportive Zoom. So yeah, I think people have got a lot out of this session. So thank you so much, Megan, for taking the time to speak to us.
Yes, thank you. And if anyone wants to connect on Instagram, I am at balance.mother. So feel free to shoot me a message over there. I'd love to hear from you. And if there's anything, other types of topics and tips you think would be helpful, let me know over there and I can put them on my page. But thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.